Hello, my name is James and I'm with our safety department here at Integrity Staffing Solutions. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes to learn about safety today. We are so excited to cover this information with you. Now, please pay close attention because these guidelines are in place to keep you safe on the job. Here at Integrity Staffing Solutions, we care very much about your well being and we want to ensure that you get home safely at the end of each day. Let's get started. Before we get into some of our more specific safety topics, I want to discuss our safe work rules. Our safe work rules are provided to give you general guidelines for working safely on the job. Let's take a few moments and review what those are. Because temporary employees may be assigned to many different work environments, each job site has its own unique hazards and safety rules to prevent injury. You must take the time to learn the safe work practices with each assignment. It is your responsibility to report injuries, hazards, accidents, and unsafe working conditions. Ask your supervisor to train you on safe performance if it is not offered on your first day of assignment. Do not engage in horseplay while at work. Do not operate equipment or machinery until you've been trained to do so. Do not operate unguarded machinery. Do not remove guards or do anything to defeat the safety features of the equipment or machine you are operating. This is also a great time to tell you about some of our safety policies. It is against Integrity Staffing Solutions policy for you to work over 6 feet at any time. The only exception would be to operate approved pit vehicles. You should not be involved with any excavation or trench work. And lastly, you should not be in any permit-required confined spaces. A confined space is an area not meant for continuous human occupation, has limited or restricted means of entry and exit, and has a potential for a hazard such as a mechanical hazard, hazardous gas, or the possibility that the space could be flooded with water or some other material. Please follow these safe work rules at all times. If your duties and responsibilities are different from the information we provide you when you're placed on assignment, or if you're subjected to unsafe conditions while at work, please notify Integrity Staffing Solutions immediately. It's also important to note that failure to follow Integrity Staffing Solutions or your work site's safe work rules may result in disciplinary action up to and including termination. We next want to cover the topic of walking and working surfaces, and specifically how to prevent slips, trips, and falls. These type of accidents can result in serious injuries and cause nearly 700 fatalities per year. OSHA maintains general industry regulations on walking and working surfaces that guard against hazards that can cause slip, trips, and falls. These hazards can harm everyone in a facility, regardless of title or job responsibilities. Some examples of slip, trip, and fall hazards include wet floors or spills, uneven surfaces, ice or snow, limited visibility around corners, cluttered work areas, not using 3 points of contact when ascending and descending stairs and ladders, trip hazards such as cords, and carrying a load that is too heavy or that obstructs your view. Although slip, trip, and fall injuries can occur anywhere, they often occur in areas such as doorways or entryways, ramps, cluttered hallways, heavy traffic areas, uneven surfaces, and areas that are prone to wetness or spills. Although these accidents can cause serious injury, they're easily preventable with a little effort on your part. You should always be aware of your surroundings at all times. When you're walking, take note of your immediate area, even if you walk in this area every day. Has anything changed? Is there perhaps a potential hazard that's not usually there? You should also avoid distractions while walking. Things like eating, using a phone, or rushing to your destination can all be distractions that can result in a slip, trip, or fall. You should also be extra cautious on smooth or loose surfaces and practice safe walking skills. This means taking short steps to keep your center of balance under you and pointing your feet slightly outward. You should avoid carrying loads that block your view. You should wear shoes with non-slip soles, and very important to note, you should always maintain 3 points of contact when using ladders or stairs. This means having one hand and 2 feet, or 2 hands and 1 foot touching at all times. We next want to take a moment to specifically discuss ladder safety. This is important because you're particularly vulnerable to fall when you're using a ladder. Before using a ladder, you should inspect it to ensure it's in good working condition. We'll discuss inspections more shortly. If any part of the ladder is damaged or missing, do not use it and immediately report it to management.
Always face the ladder and maintain 3 points of contact. Avoid carrying objects or loads on a ladder. Ladders should only be used on a stable surface. Never move or shift a ladder when you or another person is on it. Never stand on the top step of a ladder. And, when possible, avoid using ladders in trafficked areas such as passageways and doorways. In the previous slides, we briefly touched on the requirement to inspect ladders prior to using them. Let's review some of the important items to look for. You should inspect for loose parts, such as rungs, nails, bolts, and screws. Look for dented rungs or rails. Do you observe any sharp edges or any corrosion? Do you notice bends and breaks? Are all labels intact and readable? And is the ladder free of any substances that would cause a slip, such as oil, grease, or any other slippery substances? If you notice these or any other concerns during your inspection, please notify management immediately. As we wrap up this section, I also want to briefly touch on fall protection. Fall protection is the use of controls designed to protect personnel from falling, or in the event they do fall, to stop them without causing severe injury. With a few exceptions, fall protection is generally required when walking or working on surfaces that are 4 feet or higher. Fall protection includes things like covers, guardrails, safety nets, personal fall arrest, and personal fall restraint systems. A fall arrest system will stop you in the process of a fall, while a fall restraint system will keep you from reaching the edge, not allowing you to fall at all. If you are required to use fall protection on your assignment, the client will provide site-specific training. My last note on this topic is how you can make the work environment safer for yourself and others. Please make every effort to keep your work area clean and tidy. Keep passageways and aisles clear of clutter. Correct any hazards that you see. And if you can't correct a hazard on your own, you should mark it and immediately report it to management. And I know we covered this before, but this is a great time for a reminder. Please report any injuries, accidents, or any safety concerns immediately.
Every job site must have an action plan covering fire, medical, and other emergencies. If you're not made aware of these policies when at a job location, please contact your Integrity Staffing Solutions representative immediately.
In the event of an emergency, call 911 unless trained to do otherwise by your site supervisor. Take responsibility for knowing the locations of aisles, stairways, fire extinguishers, first aid kits, and emergency exits at each assignment. Evacuate immediately if directed to do so. And once you're safely out of the building, call Integrity Staffing Solutions to let us know about the emergency. Although we covered how to respond in the event of an emergency, we do want to take some time to specifically cover fire prevention and familiarize you with fire extinguishers. You should understand some of the main causes of fires. They are often started due to faulty electrical, open flames or cutting and welding, friction, flammable liquids and gas, explosive dust, and ordinary combustibles. Our clients take many proactive measures to prevent fires, but you can also help while in the workplace. You should ensure that your workspace is not cluttered, as this can provide fuel for fires. Check for damaged or overloaded electrical outlets, cords, and cables. Keep anything that can burn away from electrical equipment. If you see an obstacle in front of an exit, remove it or report it. Always be aware of the best escape routes from your location, and report any hazards immediately. In the event of a fire, the fire alarm should be immediately activated and 911 should be called. Evacuate the facility and notify your coworkers as long as it does not delay your exit. Never use an elevator during an emergency. Instead, you should walk and not run down the stairs. Only employees who are specifically trained should fight fires, and only if the fire is in its initial stages and can be controlled with an extinguisher. Integrity employees are not approved to fight fires unless it's in an effort to aid your escape from the building. We next want to review with you the different classes of fire extinguisher. Extinguishers are classified by the type of fire that they can put out. Some extinguishers are combination types that can be used on several different types of fires. Class A can be used for ordinary combustibles such as wood, cloth, paper, and rubber. Class B can be used for flammable liquids, gases, and greases. Class C can be used for energized electrical equipment, and Class D can be used for combustible metals. The class of fire extinguisher can be easily identified by looking at the markings on the side of the extinguisher. We lastly want to review how to use a fire extinguisher if you must use one to aid your escape from a building fire. To operate the extinguisher, you should remember the pass steps. You pull the pin, aim at the base of the fire, squeeze the operating handle, and sweep from side to side. You should also remember to stand 6 to 8 feet away from the fire.
Although this may not apply to your position, some of our assignments may require you to work in an office setting and use a computer and phone. If you are assigned to a clerical or office position, please follow these best practices. Chairs and sometimes desks and monitors should be adjustable to accommodate different body types and heights. While seated, your head, neck, and torso should be in line, not bent or twisted. While seated, your feet should be flat on the floor with your thighs parallel to the floor. While working at a desk, your forearms, wrists, and hands should be in line and not bent. While using a keyboard or input device such as a mouse or trackball, your hands and wrists should not be resting on any sharp or hard edges and not at an angle as to cause wrist strain. If you are using a monitor, the monitor should be at a level and distance where you can read it without bending your head back or downwards. Glare from any other light sources should be minimized to reduce eye strain. If you're using a telephone while also using a computer, the phone should be able to be used while keeping your head upright and your shoulders relaxed. I know we are sending a lot of information your way, but stick with us. We have some very important topics still to cover. I next want to talk about proper lifting techniques, and this is so important because these techniques are in place to help you avoid injury to your back. If they are available, you should use assisting devices to help you lift. Devices such as a crane, hoist, lift table, dolly, or cart. You can also enlist the assistance of one or more people to help with heavy lifting. As a general rule, you should get assistance with anything over 50 pounds. Size up the load and get a firm footing. Your feet should be shoulder width apart, with one foot slightly ahead of the other. Bend your knees and avoid bending at your waist. Get as close to the object as you can and stay on the balls of your feet. Tighten your stomach muscles before lifting to help support your spine. Keep the object as close to your body as you can while lifting. Lift with your legs, arms, and shoulders, and use your back as little as possible. Never twist your body. Move your body by using your feet, not by twisting at your waist. And when you can, push loads rather than pull them. Bloodborne pathogens can cause disease when transmitted from an infected individual to another individual through blood and bodily fluids. Common illnesses resulting from bloodborne pathogens include hepatitis B and acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, or AIDS. At your job site, you will go through detailed site-specific training, but at all times you should assume that all blood or bodily fluid is infected and alert your site supervisor immediately. You should never attempt to clean up any spills yourself, as there are personnel at your work site properly trained to clean up spills of contaminated material. Never pick up syringes or use your hands to compress trash in a wastebasket. And if you have any concerns or are not given training at your work site, please contact your Integrity Staffing Solutions representative immediately. You have the right to know about hazardous chemicals in your workplace. Every company that uses hazardous chemicals must have and provide access to a written program, including a list of chemicals and safety data sheets for each chemical. If hazardous chemicals are being used, site-specific training must be given at the work site. And if you're asked to work with a chemical and you've never been trained, ask your immediate supervisor for training. And please, notify Integrity Staffing Solutions about any additional concerns or if you do not have hazardous communication training at your work site. Let's talk about some of the important things that you need to know about chemicals in the workplace, but please note that this does not replace any site-specific training given to you at the job site. There are 3 different ways you can be informed about chemicals in your workplace: a label that's on the container, the safety data sheet, or SDS, and through formal training. Let's take a closer look at each of these. All containers of potentially hazardous chemicals must be clearly labeled. If the container does not have its original label, it must have a secondary label that includes the name of the chemical and the hazard information. All chemicals should also be labeled with pictures that show you what the specific hazards are. These pictures are called pictograms. These are examples of the pictograms you may see. Please ensure you are familiar with these pictures and what they mean to you. Every hazardous chemical in the workplace must also have a safety data sheet, or SDS. Every SDS is separated into sections of information. It includes information on flammability, health hazards, types of exposure, recommended personal protective equipment, or PPE, what to do in case of an exposure, and how to clean up spills. And while some of the information is technical in nature, the sections on recommended PPE and what to do in case of an exposure or spill will be in plain English. SDS for each chemical should be on site and available for your review upon request. You should also receive training on hazardous chemicals. You should be trained when you are first assigned to work with a chemical, when a new chemical or process is introduced, or when you or other employees are not following the training guidelines. Your site-specific training on hazardous chemicals should include the name of the chemical or its brand, should explain the potential hazards of using or misusing the chemical, train you on how to mix, pour, or apply the chemical, what PPE to use, and it should also cover what to do in case there's an exposure. Before we move on from hazardous communication, we just want to share a few safety tips on chemicals in the workplace. Please keep these in mind when you're working at the job site. You should never eat, drink, or smoke in areas where hazardous materials are present. Do not work with chemicals unless you've been trained in their safe use. If you notice a chemical spill, do not clean it up yourself unless you've been fully trained to do so and you have the correct personal protective equipment to protect yourself. If you notice symptoms such as difficulty breathing, skin irritation, or stinging eyes, notify your site supervisor immediately. And lastly, keep in mind that there are multiple ways that you can be exposed to chemicals. You can be exposed through inhalation, ingestion, and they can even be absorbed through your skin. When it comes time for maintenance, repairs, or retooling of equipment or machinery, simply turning off the machine does not give workers enough protection. Many serious, even fatal accidents have occurred when someone thought the machine was safely turned off. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, has developed a standard that requires that a machine be de-energized and locked out to stay de-energized while the machine is repaired, maintained, or cleaned. Employees could be injured if an unexpected energizing, startup, or release of stored energy occurs. Examples of activities that could require lockout include the following: adjusting a machine, inspecting a machine, removing jams, cleaning, modifying, constructing, retooling, or lubricating. This is also a great time to mention that machines have many different sources of energy. Besides electricity, machines may also have one or more of the following types of energy: pneumatic, hydraulic, mechanical, gravity, steam, chemical, pressure, or radiation. Although each machine has its own specific lockout procedures, we want to provide you with an overview of the process. The basic steps of a lockout program include preparing for the lockout. This includes a review of the sources and amounts of energy and notifying all affected employees. Shutdown of the machine, isolation of all energy sources, applying lockout devices to energy sources using the appropriate lockout materials and hardware, verification that the machine's energy sources are actually isolated and de-energized, and finally, proper release from lockout to restore energy. It should be noted that a tag-out process is only appropriate if there is no way to lock out an energy source. Please remember that you should never try to start or operate a machine if it is tagged out. There is specific training given to personnel that will lock or tag out any equipment. But I want to take this time to clarify that it is against Integrity Staffing Solutions policy for any of its associates to be trained in lockout, tagout, or to use any locks or tags. Remember, you must be trained in the safe operation of all equipment or machinery you're asked to operate. Part of your operational training should include your job site's lockout program. And if you have any questions about safety on your assignment, notify your site supervisor and let Integrity Staffing Solutions know if you have any additional concerns. The last topic we want to cover today is personal protective equipment, or PPE. When certain hazards in the workplace cannot be removed, the worksite may require the use of PPE to minimize the hazard to the employee. If you are sent to an assignment that requires the use of PPE, you must wear, maintain, and store the PPE as directed by your site supervisor. While each work site is different in its requirement for PPE, we want to give you a general overview of the common PPE requirements. The first is head protection. Hard hats are required on construction sites or in manufacturing or other environments whenever there is danger of head injury from objects falling from above. Hearing protection, such as earplugs or other similar devices, are used when a work area has been identified as having a noise level requiring hearing protection, or when operating certain types of machinery or equipment that generate high noise levels. Eye protection generally consists of safety glasses, goggles, or face shields. We require that these items be worn when grinding, welding, or performing other work which exposes the worker to chemical spray or splash, flying particles or fragments, irritating mist, hot sparks, high temperature exposure, or optical radiation. Some work sites even require eye protection to be worn at all times in certain areas. When it comes to protecting your hands, gloves can be very effective. Gloves can be used to minimize the risk from such hazards as cuts, punctures, abrasions, chemicals, burns, and vibration. Different gloves are required for different hazards. Please also note that gloves must not be worn when the worker is exposed to moving parts in which they might be caught. Depending on your work activities, there may be a requirement for closed-toed shoes, rubber boots, steel-toed shoes, or other specialty footwear to protect your feet from injury. Don't worry, we will notify you of any requirements before placing you on assignment. The last type of PPE is breathing protection. If breathing protection such as a respirator is required to perform your work activities safely, you must first go through a medical evaluation process. This process starts with a questionnaire, and you must be fit tested with a respirator. If your assignment involves wearing a respirator, more information and training will be provided to you prior to starting your assignment. When PPE is required, your site supervisor must train you before you are exposed to any hazardous task. Training should include when PPE is necessary, what PPE is necessary, how to properly wear the PPE, the limitations of the PPE, and the proper maintenance, useful life, and disposal of the PPE. If you have any questions about hazards and PPE, ask your site supervisor first. Notify Integrity Staffing Solutions if you have any remaining questions or concerns. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes to learn about safety today. By now you can see that Integrity Staffing cares very much about your health and your safety. But we won't be with you at all times, and that's why it is so important that you follow these safety protocols and that you notify Integrity immediately if you have any concerns. Thank you, and good luck on your assignment.